I am very excited about today's guest because I haven't written any poetry since the seventh grade. I love words. Oh, it's true. I love words, but I have no insight into how the mind of a poet works, into how they create what they create. So today I am talking to Rebecca G. Biber. Rebecca is not only a poet, she's a collaborative pianist and a music teacher. Her first book of poetry, Technical Solace, was published in 2017 by Fifth Avenue Press. Her poetry has appeared in, get ready for it, Cutthroat, Lilith, The Lyric, The Passion Fruit Review, The Passion Fruit Re The Passion Fruit Review, the Pettigrew Review, and the Bach Book. Rebecca won the 2025 Barbara Stevens Poetry Manuscript Competition. She placed in the Poets and Patrons Annual Contest. This is a poetry education nonprofit based in Chicago. She conducts workshops, does readings of her poetry, sometimes streaming, so you can watch it from anywhere. And that's not even covering her musical career. We're going to get into all of it. Rebecca, thank you for talking with me today.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Maureen.
Well, let us start with why poetry? Why do you write poetry?
Well, I write poetry for the same reason I play music, which is simply that I need to. These are some of the oldest urges that I can remember, other than hunger and sleep. And I write to have a means to express myself. As for why poetry, I think people just gravitate to the genre that fits them, and this one happens to fit me.
Where does your inspiration come from? Is it different for each poem?
Well, I often write about my connection with music. I write about my Jewish family heritage. I write about the natural world. I write about the experience of being a woman in this world of ours and in relationships. And then I just hope that my work will somehow connect with readers. But as for the inspiration, I believe for me it consists in a process of listening. I hear, sort of metaphorically, I hear that there's something important I need to write about. And if I listen carefully, inside my mind, I will get an image or maybe one line of a poem that gets me started, and I go from there. So I kind of feel like I'm receiving an idea, and then it's up to me to develop it.
It doesn't sound like there's any frustration in the process for you, which there there is for me in my kind of writing. Is that true?
That is an excellent question. The fact that I've never thought about it before is telling me that there is no frustration. There is tiredness. I hit bumps in the road, and I need to take breaks when I'm writing about really difficult material, particularly when I'm writing about history or grief or loss. So it's not all easy, but it still feels very natural and cyclical. And when I need to take a break and rest, I know I'll get back to it eventually.
I have your book of poems, Technical Solace, and it is described as concise, vivid poems on themes of music, family, Jewish heritage, love, loss, and identity. And you've already touched on that to an extent. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. I'll say that this is the book that I have published, and I have a forthcoming book this year, and they're very different, principally in the length of the poems. So in Technical Solace, most of the poems are well under a page, and in the new book, several of them are multiple pages, even perhaps 6 to 8 pages long. So structurally, these are very different books. I do touch on a lot of the same things, same topics, but from different angles and with different writerly techniques, and I hope also with different levels of reflection and maturity.
We do change over time, and the
We do.
things that we bring to our writing changes. Do you want to talk about the upcoming book? Do you want to give us a little sneak idea of what to expect from it, the book of poems?
Sure, yeah, and I would love to read you a little sample from each book if you're up for it.
I am up for it. Yes.
So yeah, I'll briefly mention that the what you mentioned in your wonderful intro. I won the 2025 Barbara Stevens Memorial Poetry Competition. The final judge this year was Chris Abani, who is known for his poetry and fiction writing, which is also memoiristic. And he selected my manuscript, which means that it will be published in July 2026 by NFSPS, which stands for National Federation of State Poetry Societies. So
That's
as of July,
amazing. Wow.
thank you. It's dream come true. So it's my second book will be out in July, and yeah, as I mentioned, these are very different books. I love them both. To me, they're kind of like siblings to each other. And I hope to just continue writing and maybe even have a third book in my future.
Well, do you want to read one of your poems for us right now? You've got me very, very curious.
Yes, well, you know what? I would love to read you something from Technical Solace. And I picked this one out specially for you, Maureen, because you are a playwright. And
Okay.
so I'll set this poem up a little bit for you and your listeners. This poem is inspired by a modern play, Eurydice, by Sarah Rule. And I saw this play probably close to 20 years ago. At this point, Sarah Rule is a well-established playwright. Her work has a strong feminist angle to it. And of course, in this play, she's drawing inspiration from the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, mostly focusing on the woman's experience. And if you'll indulge me in a little tangent here, I'll mention that this is one of my favorite ways to do poetry. It's called ekphrasis.
I have to interrupt you. I love bringing someone on where I have to actually look up a definition before before I talk to you. Please explain.
So, ekphrasis, in a nutshell, is art about other art. For example, a painting of a Bible story is ekphrastic, or Stephen Sondheim writing a musical about the painting of Georges Seurat is ekphrastic.
Okay.
And I love to write poetry inspired by works of music, painting, sculpture, plays. So I'll just point out actually that this is a double ekphrasis because it's a poem about a play about a myth.
Wow. Okay, everybody, you're going to be quizzed on this at the end. Double emphasis. All right. And by the way, you're on here to do tangents. You're on this podcast to talk. So, yes, please let us hear this poem.
All right. Well, in the play as well as in the poem, Eurydice is in the underworld. She's just despondent, trying to figure out if anything can change. She's just hanging out in Hades. And while she's there, she bumps into her dad. So that's where we begin. Eurydice halfway, after Sarah Rule. Dad was already in the land of the dead, surprised when I arrived. He drew me out of the boat, took my case, and tried persistently to warm my hands with air. Shuffled his feet, humming of fluorescent lights or telephone wire. I felt bad, wished to accommodate him like I was older and previously there. What to say to my ghost progenitor in fedora and rumpled suit? There is no weather. I don't remember a thing, but these talking rocks spit lies, I tell you what. what if we both know one idea this minute and it makes us strange? The man bowed and angered me. Like him, I wouldn't opt to forget. That's life, he says, weak smile. It changes according to rules I'd like to share with you, if you don't mind. I know you're a grown woman, but let me, honey, build you this bedroom in hell. Paper clips and time. Write letters. No one to stop you trying. Keep out of the river. Your young man, waiting still.
Wow. There are so many emotionally charged phrases in that. And it brings such a story. And those characters, you know them. You know them. But you hear things like rocks spitting lies, a bed in hell. Oh, that's very vivid. That is
Thank you.
very vivid. Uh, Something occurs to me. I think there are fewer poets than, for instance, fiction writers. Does that ever bother you? Do you ever have trouble finding your community, or does it matter to you? Are you happy to work alone?
What a great question. I very much feel situated in my community, and I consider writers of all genres to be part of that. So, when I did my MFA a couple years ago, I found that people in all of the genres would hang out together, share work, even experiment with writing in each other's genres, which is a great stretch. And here at home in Ann Arbor, I regularly attend open mics and get togethers where poets and singer songwriters and fiction writers all mingle and read together. So there's that kind of physical community. And then, too, I think that my work is in conversation with other writers. So as you mentioned, with the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, we feel like we know these characters. And in a sense, I'm talking to the reader. I'm also talking to Sarah Rule, although I don't think she'll ever read my poem. And and when I write in response to the zeitgeist, the poetry that's being written today, I'm part of that larger community of poets as well.
I did not mean my question to make you feel like other. It was probably more of an expression of my own kind of awe toward poets.
Ah,
Don't know how they do it. I read a poem by Billy Collins, and he talks about animals going extinct, leaving by a door at the back of the world. And I'm like, what? How do you think of something like that? And you get it right away. But, my background probably as a journalist makes me very logical. So let's continue.
yeah.
What do you have a favorite poem, or is that asking you to pick a favorite child? You did pick your two books to be siblings, but what about the individual poems?
I can't say that right now I have a favorite poem, but I would say that each poem, as I finish it, becomes the favorite briefly. Like whatever I've just written it definitely has its spotlight. And I did recently write and share a poem about our current political unrest and protests, which are so very necessary. If it's all right, I'd actually like to share one with you that is current events related, but it came out a few months ago.
Yes, please.
Great. So I was really hoping we would get into kind of activist poetry, which is a genre, and it's something that I believe in. It's a maybe quieter form of protest than physically being in the streets, but depending on the day, I might be doing that, I might be doing this. So I will also say, to set up this poem, I'm sometimes asked how to get your work out there. And there are lots of ways to do that, one of which is to submit a poem or two to a contest. You can find out about these through lots of free writers' newsletters. And a lot of the contests are free or low cost to enter. So last year I submitted to this contest called Building Bridges. And it had a kind of humanitarian theme, like building bridges across cultures and countries. And it was sponsored by a press in the UK. And the deal was all of the finalists would get their poems printed and bound in this anthology, Building
Nice.
Bridges. So I did not win, but I was one of the finalists. And I feel like I'm in great company, surrounded by other poets writing about really urgent personal and political issues. So the poem I'm going to read you here is about the stripping away of women's bodily autonomy as our American culture and politics keep getting pushed farther and farther to the right. And I, ironically, borrowed a slogan from the far right as my title and then repurposed it.
Oh, I want to hear this.
So, yes, this is called Blood and Soil. I come from a family of gardeners, and I the least. No great carrot swath, straw swaddled for the first frost sweetness. No tomatoes, heavy and hairy with itchy deliciousness. No ripe snap peas, you get the idea. I grow ground cover that spreads, reliable orange lilies, shrubs even a crushing snowfall can't kill. The pink gladiolus volunteered, dusty millers overwintered, and I keep them here. I refuse to reproduce. The people who made me have accepted this. My country cannot accept it. Women raised on corn and soybean land think being female means being them, fecund. Men whose daddies and granddaddies knew best take up pruners, gloves, and fountain pens. First, pluck decisions from poor women. Cull money already stunted, never setting foot on parched dirt. Claim to catch accidental infants as they fall. But falling fruits have randomness, the breeze. Talk of life ignores the frail shoot that fails to sprout, to thrive. The blood that rinses clean, that must be plowed back in. Not every crop brought forth next spring will get nourishing rain. Bodies, full or fallow, need more than lawgivers give in their noblesse oblige. Might they look a child in the eye and say, "Your violation continues now. You will never be done." I come from a fortunate bunch with a little cash. If I needed to rid myself of seed, I would go anywhere. I can. No roots I'd have to saw through, no hothouse beliefs to lose, no squatters' rights on the land, just this little place I call mine alone, within. I will live and die. I will not grow round. I will not insist that others act like me, nor I like them. On my period, I kneel and weed my plot, loath to deracinate anything, unwilling to give up.
Wow. What a distinctive point of view. What a powerful expression of belief and of the state where we are at this time in this world, in this country. Have you ever gotten any pushback on this kind of poetry? And follow-up question, is activist poetry, can it actually achieve something tangible, something substantial?
Well, these are such vital questions. I haven't directly gotten pushback to my poetry face to face, I've gotten pushback in regular everyday discussions very frequently. As you can imagine, I'm not shy about sharing my beliefs that women are fully human. So, and I suppose I don't know whether there is pushback in the form of rejections, because when you submit and your work isn't accepted, you don't know why that is. And I'm sure you would probably agree that you can't let the rejection slips drive you mad or keep you up at night or wonder why,
Or
this,
change you.
or change you, right? Can it achieve anything? I really hope so. Sometimes I find myself reading to a room that is very receptive, and I think the effect it has is of heartening the people who feel as I do. We all get discouraged from time to time. We all get really tired of fighting the various fights. And so I hope it has a sort of strengthening effect. And sometimes I read to a room where, I might be one of only a couple women in the room, and it's sort of like a sea of white male faces. And I'm talking about abortion, I'm talking about menstruation, and I'm, directly speaking from my experience. And, I hope it reaches people who might not otherwise be thinking about those topics. But we don't really know. And sometimes the effect might not take root until much later.
That kind of brings me into another question. Who are your readers? Have you met them? Do you know them? Who's buying your book or responding to your poetry in the publications that it's in?
Yeah, to some extent I know who they are. I think they tend to be well-educated folks. I think they tend to be folks who have already had some experience reading poetry. I'm probably not for beginners, but that's okay. I get told a lot that my poetry is really smart. I think I have kind of sometimes an elevated vocabulary, but I hope that it's still accessible. I think that with my first book being published by a small local press, and getting publicity, in my town, I think I can say Ann Arborites, read my book, and family and friends. And I'm really hoping that with the second book, because it's going to be nationally published and distributed, my readership may expand. And I don't want to be a gatekeeper of a poet. I like to think that I could be read by anyone, and if they have to look up a word, that's fine. And if they just, if people just connect with certain ones of my poems and not others, that's okay. I really, I'm kind of about quality over quantity in that sense. So if any readers at all, anywhere, find meaning in my work, then I am good.
You seem very comfortable doing the reading, and I think a lot of writers are introverts and might have trouble reading their poetry or their work in general. Did you always have this kind of ease with it, or did you have to work up to it?
I am very at ease with public speaking for one reason. It is so much easier than playing the piano.
But you're an accomplished pianist.
I've been playing the piano officially since I was 7, and I've been playing in public, yeah, for nearly 4 decades. But I still get nervous for that. It is so technical and so unpredictable, and it feels like there is so much at stake. And to me, reading poetry entails taking a deep breath and speaking words that I wrote. And I don't quite know how else to say it. It just feels easier. So for people who feel shy about public speaking, my advice is take up an instrument and you'll be fine.
Okay. You play piano at some fairly high pressure events, don't you? Like weddings?
I
Yeah.
do.
You don't want to
And
mess up at someone's wedding.
you don't want to mess up, and performance weddings and church services are also similar to theater in a way, in that things are choreographed, but things can go wrong. And if the bride has a wardrobe malfunction backstage and you need to stall, you might just be looping that wedding prelude music over and over. This is not hypothetical, Maureen.
Oh no. Oh,
So yeah, it's I do play for public events, as you know, for the theater, and I was a choir accompanist for about a decade until COVID shut that down, and fortunately, those things are now up and running again. But yeah, it's a whole thing to be in front of an audience, and I really try not to think too hard for music or for poetry about what does the audience think of me, and just to stay focused on the task.
I do have some more questions for you, but before we get into, and I'd love to hear some more poetry, where can people find you? Let's cover that before we get on with other things.
Wonderful. So I'm a pretty novice social media person, but I do have a poet Instagram account. It's Rebecca underscore G underscore Biber underscore poet on Instagram. And I am currently creating my very first poet website. When it goes live, it will be RebeccaGBiberPoet.com. That's all one word. And I currently do have a blog where I write about poetry and post about events, and that is doggerel.blog, doggerel.blog. So speaking of being introverted, that's where my introversion shows. I don't love being on the internet, but folks can find me there. And I will say I may not be great at meeting in the public sphere, but I'm awesome one-on-one. And I always love to hear from readers and listeners anytime.
I will have all those links in the show notes. What advice would you give to people who are just starting out as poets, writing poetry? I've got a young friend, and she is working through some traumatic things in her life, and she has found a love of poetry and she's embracing it. Any advice for her and for
It's
others?
fantastic. Yeah, I think that is the big thing is just to find poetry to begin with. Lots of trial and error. I would say go to a lot of open mics and just meet your fellow poets. Read widely in different time periods across different cultures. And I would say, too, read your work out loud. Even if you're not ready for public speaking, read your work out loud in your room, because poetry, like music, is all about sound. And you can begin to sound like yourself and find your voice.
Can we hear another poem now?
I would love that. Yes. So this one is a little on the longer side, and it's from the upcoming book. So to set this one up, this is about my grandmother, and it's a snapshot from her life. I am the grandchild of Polish Holocaust survivors on my mom's side. And my grandmother was a hidden child. So she was 10 years old when Hitler invaded, and that shattered her previously lovely, rather easy life with her family, and they had to go into crisis mode and then into hiding. And my grandmother was someone I got to spend a lot of time with. She never buried the past. She talked a lot about it. And I wanted to put some of that on paper, especially now that she has passed. So this poem jumps back and forth in time between her childhood undergoing this horrible catastrophe and events in my childhood around the same age. So, when she was about 10 or 11, she had to figure out how to convincingly lie to Nazi soldiers in public so she wouldn't get caught or identified as a Jew.
Oh,
And when I was that age, I loved school and I played with my friends. And I got to cook with my grandmother, and she was teaching me crafts like knitting and crochet. And I was a healthy kid with everything I needed, and she was barely getting enough to eat. And so, the contrast is obvious, and I was aware of it growing up. So it does kind of mark you to know in these very specific ways how different your life is, and how lucky it is, to have the safe and fortunate life. So just for clarity, I want to say that when I name the person I'm addressing in the poem, it's my grandmother, but she has many names for different languages and different contexts. So if it sounds as though I'm addressing different people, it's all her, all of these names that start with S.
okay.
All right. So this is called Documentation, the names of my grandmother. Sala, when you turned 10, the German army came to Poland. Systematically, you said, city by city by city. Offered chocolate to the roadside kids, took the first bite to show it was safe. The perfect time for hopscotch was after a rainstorm. You pulled on fresh white knee socks. You thought to tell me this because I was wearing knee socks. Stefania, a disguise you made up on the spot. She was a way to be average, child on a passenger train, case of food. Indeed, the officer left you alone. They were picking out the Sarahs and Rachels, Daniels and Herschels, anyone with the Bible in their name. Your father carried you proudly, bumped into the family doctor on the street. You were still weak from illness. Is this the same girl? She lived? The neighbors were Catholic and decent. The woman called Pani Olewska, far-off savior, non-ancestor, whom I venerate. When catastrophe came, they hadn't a store or factory, just an earth-floored cellar to keep you three, mother, sister, self. Before hiding, there was the day German soldiers knocked on your door and informed your mother she should start crying now. When you taught me to knit, we were nested like little doll in bigger doll, your hands on my hands, needles and scrap yarn, ambidextrous and symmetrical. The genetics doctor wants my family tree. I tell her, we don't know where or when your father went. Cause of death? Circumstance? Betrayal? Wrong luck? Sacrifice? When you lost an earring, he put its sad mate in his shaving kit to reunite. You were sent to walk your grandfather home from shul. It somewhat lessened the rocks, the word Žid. Why do you cook potato soup now, when it was all you had back then? Doesn't it remind you of that time? I stand corrected, not the same thing. This bowl is carrot-rich, a roux mixed in, the hotter the better, challah sponging broth, last sips drunk from the dish. At some point, we bathed each other. You are my mother's mother. Typhus etched a dozen poems in your back. I started doing more things left-handed to see if I could, picturing the pencil tugged from your grip. Everything but writing you do with your dominant hand. When you say you were a nurse in the DP camp, I believe you, but want to know how. How were you trained? Who believed that an undernourished teen could do that work? Anthony is your favorite saint. I have never understood the ways he helped or why he let the looters in your home. The neighbors also could have died. Your sister stifled whooping cough, barely. The thin soup came down in the dark, marking a day. Once you fled just as Germans arrived, so I exist. Too little space on this medical survey. The Polish flag is red and white, flesh and bone, with a stern eagle. The yellow star is a badge. The cross is a decision. Stefa, did they still think they hadn't done enough? They were so sweet and sorry they couldn't save their Jesus, so they saved you instead, 3 Jewesses. Today, your thanks fill archives. Back then, your thanks flew planes across bloody borders at night.
That is heartbreaking and so richly layered. Oh, Rebecca, what an accomplishment. Oh, we are just about out of time. I've got to thank you so much for sharing that, sharing all of your poems, sharing your wisdom. And I hope people look you up online, pick up Technical Solace, and look for your next book. Thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.